The latest Omen movie is now on here, so let's talk about it. Welcome to Cinema, where we focus on a film. I'm Josh, this is Simply Cinema. Let me know in the comments below if you've seen the First Omen, or if you're waiting for this review to help guide you if you're going to watch it or not. Let me know down in the comments below all that, your thoughts, and generally let's have a nice, lovely discussion talking this love for cinema altogether. Make sure you like this video, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to help join in this film culture community as we grow and talk about film each and every day. Acting as a prequel to the Omen franchise, there's a young woman that's going to a church to become a nun, and with the different revelations she finds out along the way, she's discovering a different mysterious nature for what the church is doing. She finds certain things out that become something she did not expect. And going right into positive, there's an interesting, compelling nature to the film that hooks you from the get-go, and if you notice by the synopsis, it sounds fairly familiar. That is because it is very close in nature to the Immaculate movie that I just recently watched and reviewed on his channel. But the way they go about this, it's very compelling by the motives, what they're going about with the nature of this nun and how she's exploring the world. As a prequel to the Omen franchise, it does work effectively for having this certain setup that displays things that are predictable by the way they're going. You know the kid is going to be born, and how everything is set up. There's certain mid-twists along the way that does deliver on its effectiveness, on its scale, on its payoff, and just generally the look of this film has great cinematography, a good visual appearance. The camera work isn't too complex, but it is still good enough for how well it's pulling off all of these different things, what they do with the actors, how they're pulling off their roles, and the look into the pregnancy. Because this has a woman director, they pull it off more appropriately than they do in Immaculate, which I'm going to be comparing naturally because of how similar and how closely I watched it to this film, and just the way they pull off the First Omen as a whole, as a prequel to the Omen. I do enjoy the Omen movies. I'm not a massive fan, but with the way they go about this one, it still has a better nature to it, just by the setup, the build up to these characters, and the natural progression that is slow paced, but it still serves its purpose to establishing certain characters, to establishing the way you're getting the mystery vibe, and the way they're building up to the big reveal, to certain things that are leading up to a twist, leading up to setting up the branches that will ultimately lead to the franchise and the center plot as a whole once you're getting into the First Omen movie, when looking at this as a prequel to that movie. Going into some of the mixed elements, it's feeling very familiar. It's something we've seen before, and just like I mentioned with Immaculate, it's just released a couple weeks back between these two films, and obviously they may not have copied each other intentionally by any way of imagination. And if you're wanting a franchise film connecting to the Omen franchise, obviously you're wanting to prefer this one over the original idea type of film that isn't so original anymore in any sense, because of the way the stories really connect way too closely together. There's certain scenes that almost are back and forth really close, and I'm really weirded out by the way certain scenes are so similar to each other that feels like it's made by the same people or made under the same director with the same script. And that isn't to take away from the film's quality or the story quality, because as a whole I feel the story is better, more cohesive, and more rounded than what we got in Immaculate. Some of the problems I had with Immaculate are kind of fixed here, just with the way they go about the story, the narrative, and the progression with the camera movements, how how it looks, the dialogue, and how everything is rounded about, especially with the pregnancy, how they're getting a woman director versus the man director who did Immaculate, that fixes some of the things, the appropriation for the pregnancy, how they're dealing with that, how the realistic approach looks with that. And so the experimentation is done better in a way that looks good, but like I was saying, with the pacing, it is dragging in the first half, and part of that could be because of my experience with this film being so close to watching Immaculate. Unfortunately, it is hardly divided by a 3-day stretch of watching both films that feel so close, that have so many scenes that are similar together, that it's hard to really separate. Like, I know which scene came from which movie, but it feels like I watched the same movie twice because they have so similar plot lines just in general. So as a baseline to what my review and reference point is at the moment being, it's hard to really separate and say that the pacing, while it is decent for what they're doing with the payoff, it is good for what they're doing with the story. But unfortunately, with my mixed reaction being so close to watching Immaculate, and what you may have experienced as well, having it released so close, you may feel like you're watching the same story and it doesn't ultimately pay off in any significant way that you expect. Going into the negatives, I just gotta reference the pacing again, where it is slow, it is grounded. While it does have its good nature for the approach that it's going with the film, it also holds the film back because it's like a half hour longer than Immaculate. And while it is still a better and well-rounded story than Immaculate, as I'm referencing as comparison still, because it's almost impossible to separate my point of reference in mind, it feels so elongated in the stretch of imagination, what it's needing to cover. It feels like there's many scenes that could be cut off or trimmed, and just along the lines, there's so much that was well-rounded but didn't quite deliver as a whole. The build-up, naturally, I already knew what the film was leading up to, and so it was building up a certain aspect that you're already knowing the secret behind the church, what they're doing, and generally where the Omen prophecy is coming from, and just a reference to how you're getting the story unfolding to a twist that you already get in point of mind. And so if you haven't seen any of the Omen movies at all, this may be a decent one to start with, and I wouldn't cross it out as something to start with, but it is still a film that is a prequel, and most people would already have the first film in mind. And so just with what you're leading up to, and even having the first film being a good film to start with, even before start watching the prequel, there's just a weird separation of what they're wanting to expect with how slow the build-up is, that really takes its own sweet time, that isn't necessarily detracting too much from the story as a whole, besides the patience and how well you have to maintain your integrity to really sit through it all. And so that's just my personal thoughts on the First Omen. Let me know down in the comments below what you think of it, and I have to rate it as simply 6 out of 10, so we can join in this nice lovely discussion down in the comments below. Make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe and are ready to join into this film culture community, and thank you for watching. Bye for now.